Hello everybody, welcome to today's AS English live lesson. I would like to look at some exam hints and tips because a lot of you are going into the exams at this point in time. So I thought going over some hints and tips might make you feel a little bit confident going into the exams. So let's have a look at this screen. Not this one, sorry, this one, yes. So this is all going to focus initially on paper 1 and then we'll go over some paper 2 tips so that you have a better idea of how to approach both of them. So the trick to utilizing exam time well is to adopt a method of approach. Number 1, read through the question 1 passage twice. The first time for overall impression, the second time to highlight key concepts. So this should take you 5 minutes. So if we have a look at a paper 1 exam, let's get this over here, come down here, from the May-June 2017 exam, for example, this is what your question 1 might look like. So remember, you've got to answer question 1 and either question 2 or question 3. So you've got to definitely do question 1 and then you'll choose between 2 and 3. Number 1, the extracts below are from an online review of the best bakeries in Orlando, Florida, USA. Comment on the style and language of the extracts, and this will be worth 15 points. And then basing your answer closely on the style and language of the original, write the opening of 120 to 150 words of a review of one of your favorite eating places where you live. And this would be worth 10 points. Right, so you are on a time limit. And as suggested here, when you first encounter the passage in question 1, read through it. The first time, just for an impression, and look, this is generally the length that you may get for an extract or a passage. And then you're going to do it a second time, and the second time is when you start highlighting things and pointing certain keywords out to yourself so that you already have an idea of how you're going to comment on various style and language features in the extract. Okay. All right, so that's going to take you 5 minutes. Then for your next 10 minutes, you are going to be planning your commentary. Read through the passage, breaking it down into sense units. That is, sections that explore similar or significant ideas or concepts. Then they move on to a new concept or idea. Then they move on to the next one. So break it down into sense units. These will be what you comment on. Okay, so that's how you're going to build up your commentary. What language devices are used that stick out in the passage? Are there adjectives? Are there modal verbs? Modal verbs are things that suggest possibility or ask for permission, things like might, or could, or may, or would. Okay, these kind of things are modal verbs. Are they there? If so, why? Imperatives or command words, connotations, similes, etc. So if something sticks out, comment on it. What style of writing is adopted? Is it a personal style? Is it a memoir? Is it a travel feature? Is it letters? Is it speeches? Is it informative writing, example, etc.? So remember, you get various different styles of writing, and whichever style you encounter in the passage, you should be able to describe what style it falls into. And note this down on your plan. Okay? Ask yourself, do the basic notes of your plan remain focused on the question given? So you've made your plan, but now you want to make sure that you have adhered to the question given. Go back and read the question again, just to remind yourself that you're on the right track. Lots of people slip up because they don't read the question closely enough. Okay. Finally, what stance are you taking on the matter? Is the text persuasive? Is the text biased? How does the text achieve its aims? This will form part of your conclusion or will help plan your own continuation of the piece in the B part of the question. Okay, so you've got to think about the text. Yes, you're going to look at it in detail. You're going to look for language devices, like we've already said. But remember, for the conclusion, you want to take a step back and look at what's happening overall, what is the writer trying to achieve in the text as a whole? And that's where you make an observation in your conclusion. Okay, a conclusion is not just a summary of everything you've discussed so far. No, it is an observation on what you have discussed so far. Okay, good. All right, the above is all focused on planning your answers. Remember, this is your 10 minutes worth, right? Planning should take 10 minutes. Once you have a good plan, you can get down to writing your commentary using the plan as your guide. Since the A part of the question, the commentary, is worth more marks, you should spend more time on writing it. So for part A, you can expect to spend around, let's say, 30 minutes, between 25 to 30 minutes. The B part is worth less marks and constitutes about 2 to 3 paragraphs worth of writing. And so that you would need to spend about, let's say, 15 minutes, worst case scenario, 20 minutes. All right, so you don't really want to spend more than 45 minutes writing A and B as a whole. Okay, keep your eye on the clock. Maybe wear a watch that day so that you can constantly check your watch to make sure that you are keeping to your own time limits. Okay, you've got to be very, very disciplined in the writing of the exam. Now, we're going to move on to question 2 and 3. You read over them both, okay, and try to spend about 2.5 minutes on each, roughly. Just read through the first one, read through the second one. Then choose which one you're going to write on. Being decisive saves time, so you choose the one that you're going to write on and you stick with it, right? Reread your chosen passage, another 2.5 minutes. So once again, 5 minutes as a whole on the reading exercise. Plan your plan for 10 minutes. Write part A for 30 minutes and part B for 15 minutes. Keep an eye on your time. If you do not get to the end of a question in time, simply move on to the next question. Do you see that? If you are struggling to get through a question, you are going to be wasting a lot of valuable time. Rather move on to something that might earn you more points than trying to struggle, and waste time. Okay. Right, so at the end of this, if you stick to these times roughly, where you have 5 minutes for reading, 10 minutes for planning, and 45 minutes for writing, then in theory, you'll be left with around 10 minutes to finish off your paper. What this means is that you must read over what you have written. So 3 minutes for both of the part A's and 2 minutes for both of the part B's. So this 10 minutes covers everything you have written. You must have that 10 minutes at the end. And remember that in paper one, you are given 2 hours and 15 minutes. Right. So if you can stick to these times roughly, you should be fine. You'll be left with about 10, maybe even 15 minutes to finish off your paper. And what this means is that you must read over everything you've written, and then 5 minutes for each question 1, and then question 2 or question 3. Correct any mistakes you have made, because what you might notice is that your sentence doesn't make sense when you read it. You have to insert something using a caret, or you have to strike things out and use an asterisk and write it down below. Replace whatever it was you're going to write originally with this new written sentence down below at the bottom of your paper. So this is all about correcting mistakes you have made as you read through your answers. You may just have enough time to finish off writing if you ran out of time for any of the questions. Okay, so if you didn't plan your time well, you might struggle to read over everything and fix it, but just try your best to make time for this, because it might earn you a few more marks, and that could make all the difference in terms of the grade, okay, that you are given. All right, so we're going to sum up here. You're going to take 5 minutes to read through question 1 passage twice, 10 minutes to plan your commentary, 30 minutes to write answer A, and 15 minutes to write answer B. So in theory, you're spending 1 hour on question 1. And in turn, you should be spending maybe just over an hour on question 2, depending on how quickly you get through the 2 passages. Then you should have about, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes left in theory, but to be on the safe side, at least 10 minutes to read through everything and correct your errors. So it's reading twice, planning, writing, and then going on to the next one, reading twice, planning, writing, and then checking everything. Okay, good. Now, a good thing to do before the exam is to keep practicing with past papers under a time limit. Time yourself. Can you keep to these rough times? Put it into practice. Maybe you won't be writing for 30 minutes. Maybe you'll only be writing for 25 minutes for your section A. So you get to know how you succeed when you practice these papers, and then that will help you get a better feel for the timing that you're going to have to keep to in the exam. Remember to always make notes on the extracts as you read through them. Why do this? Because it saves you coming back to an idea. You're reading through the notes the second time, and you're reading through the extract, and you're making notes as you go along. That will help to formulate your ideas more when you write down your actual plan. So you're going to have annotations, but you're going to have a little plan as well. Right, good. Okay, so that's paper one and how to approach it. Another thing I should just point out is that for paper one, you certainly want to be making sure that you break down those questions into the basic concepts, okay? So if you have to write the opening, you write the opening. You have to make it a review, you make sure it's in the form of a review. If you're not sure what a review looks like, go and look some up online. Look some up in your textbook, okay? And then let's look at some other things that you should pay attention to. So for example, this one, comment on the style and language of the passage and the ways in which it builds up tension. So this should be one of the main focus points that you explore as you go through the passage. This one's just a general style and language. Write an extract from your own autobiography. Imagine you have returned home after being away for some years. So make sure you read the question very, very closely and go back to the question from time to time to make sure you are on the right track. Right, let's move on to paper two. Now, paper two is the writing paper. And you get 2 hours for the writing paper since you don't have to read any extracts. So that's why it's 15 minutes shorter than paper one. But all the same, pay attention to each of the questions and make sure you read them closely before you make your decision on which one you're going to write. So you're going to answer, and let me just get my pen here, sorry. You're going to answer one question from section A and one question from section B. Okay. So section A is imaginative writing. This is where you are going to be either writing something that is a narrative or something that is descriptive. Both of those fall under imaginative writing. And remember, narrative writing is all about a story, characters, plot lines, things happening. Descriptive writing is more of a moment caught in time. You're using the senses to describe whatever it is the writer in your extract or the speaker in your extract is experiencing. So it pulls on the senses and it pulls on descriptions and colors and sounds and things like that, depending on the emphasis that is required of you in the question. Okay. Now you're going to be writing between 600 to 900 words for each question. Now 600 words is about 2.5 to 3 pages. Yeah, so this could be anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 pages long, depending on the size of your handwriting. Okay, so aim for about 2.5 to 3 pages. Number one says, oh, and just before I carry on, remember that in the actual exam, you will have line spaces in the question paper that you can write everything out on, your actual answers. There are blank pages where you can use notes, but I would strongly suggest that you cross through those notes so that this examiner knows those are your rough notes. And the lined paper should give you a rough idea of how much you need to write, although they probably will provide a little bit extra space just in case your handwriting is not. Okay. Also, for the exam paper, make sure you use dark blue or black ink, because the papers are scanned for the markers and they need to be able to see what you've written clearly. Try to write as neatly as you can. Okay. All right. Imaginative writing section A. Let's have a look at some of these questions. Write the ending of a story called The Finishing Line about a race that someone has spent a long time preparing for. In your writing, create a sense of drama. So things need to be dramatic. And atmosphere. Are things going to be exciting, gloomy, traumatic? You've got to decide for yourself. It's the ending of a story that you're writing here. Pay attention, that's a story, so it's definitely narrative writing, and you are given your title. So there's a lot of things to focus on in just one question. Then there's a second question, which is about two contrasting pieces, and you would similarly break that down into its particular parts. And then a third question, and I'm just going to move on to descriptive writing here. You can read number 2 for yourselves. Write a descriptive piece about a campsite during an expedition. So it's descriptive. You're going to pull on the senses. You're going to capture a moment in time. Yes, things can happen, like storm clouds can move over on the horizon, or snow can start falling, or the wind can start blowing, but there's not a storyline per se. It's not all about Jack meets Jill and they go up the hill to fetch a pail of water, for example, okay? You've got to keep things focused on description. So write a descriptive piece about a campsite during an expedition. In your writing, focus on the colors, sounds, movements at the campsite to help your reader imagine the scene. So essentially, you are scene setting. You're setting the scene. Okay. Now, let's look at some section B questions and how you should approach them. This is all about writing for an audience, and this tests your knowledge of your awareness of an audience, but it also tests your knowledge of an awareness of format or different genres of writing. Formats and genres, styles. So for example, number 4, a new shopping center recently opened in your town. Write a review. So it's got to take the form of a review, okay, of the shopping center, which will be published in your local newspaper. And because it's a newspaper and it's going to be for public consumption, you have got to make it formal. Okay, formal, but because it's a review, it's also got to be interesting and possibly enticing if it's a good review. Okay. Then number 5, students from your school recently did a week's work experience working in local businesses. Your head teacher has asked for some feedback. Write 2 contrasting letters to the head teacher of 300 to 450 words each. One from a student who has gained from the experience, okay, a week's work experience, and another from a student who did not consider it a good use of school time. Remember, in these contrasting exercises or comparative text exercises, you've got to create a sense of 2 different voices speaking. So put yourself into character and write from their point of view. Then take yourself out of that character and put yourself into a new character and write from their point of view. Just make sure that the voices sound slightly different, the styles are slightly different, the vocabulary is slightly different. Convince your marker that you know how to create contrast in writing. And then number 6, write the script of a voiceover for a TV documentary. Okay, so it's going to be a TV documentary. Think about wildlife documentaries, think about travel documentaries, anything that you may have watched that's do with documentaries. Think of them, think of how they are structured, what is said over them. And this is going to be in particular about popular childhood games. The program is aimed at a range of ages and aims to show how games have changed over the years. In your writing, create a sense of interest and enthusiasm. So I would argue that for this particular piece, because it's for a range of ages, you could keep things clear and concise, but not too simple, because you want to be able to appeal to probably older children, teenagers, adults, and maybe the older generation as well. So because they've given you a range of ages, maybe that even helps you to structure which section is going to target which particular age range. Okay. for example. All right, so that is how you would approach a paper 2. Break it down into its essential component parts of the question. Now, let's just get a look at some of the examiner's comments to these 2 particular exam papers, and we're going to focus on the paper 2 comments here. The key message was that learners need to ensure that they read a wide range of material from a range of diverse sources, such as travel writing, memoirs, biographies, autobiographies, newspaper articles, blogs, and advertisements, so that they can assess not only the conventions, the things that typically occur in those kinds of writings, and the language associated with different formats and genres, but also comment on the effects and qualities conveyed by specific words and phrases. Okay, so you have to be aware of how writers create effects in these kinds of, in these forms, formats, or genres of writing. So my suggestion to you would be to look through the course book, look for examples of these kinds of things. Look through your online course. There are examples of each of these kind of types of writing, or most of them anyway. And then look at some blogs online. Get a feel for what they look like. Look at how they are laid out. Look at the kind of language that is used. Look at the ideas that are explored. Okay, and get to know each of these kinds of formats so that if you choose a question that deals with one of these, you won't be stumped, okay? All right, students should be able to comment on how a particular extract is structured in the way that it unfolds. Does an extract focus on something narrow and then work to a larger idea, so it unfolds in a certain way, and how it develops in terms of subject, mood, and tone. Sometimes there will be a change in subject or a development in subject. There will be a change in mood and tone. Now, mood generally refers to the atmosphere created, so one of humor, one of gloom and doom, and a tone is the attitude of the writer. Is the attitude of the writer serious, or is it humorous, or is it melancholic? All of these things. So there is a bit of a step over between mood and tone, but otherwise they can be quite separate things. So pay attention to that as an extract unfolds. Perhaps somebody starts out recounting their lives on a sad note and then it becomes happier, or happier and then sad. So be aware of these things. Learners should be able to explore the contrasts and differences between the sections of a given extract. Okay, so I think it's actually, sorry, this is focusing on paper 1, not paper 2. I just realized. Sorry, paper 1 and paper 2. Right, because we're busy talking about extracts, so that is where the focus is. And so learners need to be able to explore the contrasts and differences between the sections of a given extract. They need to move beyond identifying essential aspects of language and style, such as personification, alliteration, and punctuation, so that the effects of such features are considered in relation to their context and the extract as a whole. So if you are reading through a dramatic, let's say you're reading through a section of a play, not that you would probably get that, but let's say you're reading through a section of a play and people were getting very emotional in the play and there was lots of punctuation, and this happened to be the extract, you would comment on how the punctuation emphasizes their trauma or their anger or their pain. Describe the effect. So yes, you identify it, but then you look at the effect and then you see how it functions as a whole in the context of drama, tragedy, comedy, whatever it might be. Okay. Learners who write precisely and economically, which means concise, clear, plain language. That doesn't mean being dumbed down. This means being very clear. Clear and concise, and not trying to say something in a million words when it can be said in 10 words. So they write precisely and economically, maintaining a close focus upon style and tone, are those who tend to achieve best results. So be precise, be economic, concise, maintain a precise focus upon style and tone. They also need to be able to adapt their own writing style to incorporate diverse directed tasks in the directed writing sections, questions, For example, you need to be able to write letters, articles, diaries, and demonstrate secure familiarity with their conventions and style. A secure degree of technical accuracy, especially in the use of spelling, punctuation, and tenses, is required at this level. So if a piece is completely in the past tense, comment on how that works. Or if it's in the present, why has the writer used the present tense? Now, I would like to go down to paper 2 for the last couple of minutes and just see the key messages here. I want to focus in particular on these 2 sections since we are limited for time. Now, in preparing for section A, imaginative writing, candidates should develop skills in sustaining narratives or stories in the tense they start out with. And usually stories start in the present tense. Think of fairy tales. Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a tower. Those are all past tense verbs. Okay, so imaginative writing, candidates should develop skills in sustaining narratives in the tense they start out with and safeguard against confusion of tense forms. So don't start out in the present and then move to the past. Unless you are particularly using a flashback feature, then you would do that. But most stories are written in the past tense. Candidates should differentiate between showing versus telling to improve descriptive and narrative skills. So don't just give a summary of a story, show what happens, use dialogue, describe gestures, describe settings in your narrative. Okay. Candidates must demonstrate their ability to make the reader feel as if they are in the world created in their narrative and seek to utilize a broad range of effects in their work. So make it as real as you can, as believable as you can. When preparing for section B, writing for an audience, candidates should be encouraged to read a wide variety of newspaper and magazine articles, both print and online, as background preparation. So that you know that there's always a title, a main title or a headline, and that there is usually an introduction or a stand first of some kind that introduces the piece, and then subdivisions of ideas that explore each part of the topic in the article. Candidates should be exposed to the tone, register, and format of magazine articles and newspaper correspondence. So we've mentioned things like tone. Remember, register, as I've probably said 1,000 times before, and sorry if I'm repeating myself, it's when you're either writing in a formal kind of style or an informal kind of style. Okay, so that's what we mean by register. And then a format, the layout. Okay. All right, I think we've actually come to the end of our lesson. Hopefully, this gives you, sorry, I'm just going to skip here. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of the kinds of things you need to think about when approaching your exam. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope to see you next time. Bye.